Hi, I'm Senshu, one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan offers his wisdom tirelessly with complete love and devotion. If you value these teachings, Sokuzan, the mandala of SokukoJi, please consider donating at SokukoJi.org. Thank you.
Morning Dharma talk. It's a difficult subject to put into words, let alone deeply understand. I've thought about it many times. I've given talks on this topic, but it just, rather than just gets easier and easier to, it just gets harder and harder for this old man to do this. And when I say harder, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it or that I can't do it or I'm faltering or anything like that particularly, but it's about, what was the topic I gave you? You came in and I didn't know what I was going to talk about until you came in the door. And I'm not sure what that was about, but it wasn't about you though. Okay. What was the topic?
What is blame?
What is blame? What is it when anything happens and something happens, any difficult situation, which could be the lawnmower breaking, or it could be something someone said to us, some kind of response between someone that we're really close to or someone we're just met yesterday, on and on. Some could be someone that we're very affectionate with, very close to. As I said, it's just, but what is it when something appears? And we could start out with just the attribution of credit. Give somebody credit for something they do. Someone does this, oh, thank you for helping me with that. But we divide it up into what we want and what we don't want. I'm tempted to go into personal examples of it, but I'm not going to do that at all. You have plenty of your own you can go to, and I would appreciate it when I get to some point where there seems to be a period. I would appreciate it if you ask questions coming out of your understanding. As you've probably heard me say many times, CCC, communicate, cooperate, collaborate, so important to communicate. And that doesn't mean just you talking and telling people how you're feeling particularly, although that's some of it, but also receiving and listening, receiving, hearing, receiving and endeavoring to understand deeply what is being brought your way by way of a response to a question or however it may be. Just like this Dharma talk, I don't plan anything. You may listen to my talk and think you might want to start planning things because your talk is this or that. Maybe I should. But I don't really have natural skill in that area. So I am not trying to get you or anyone to stop blaming anyone. I certainly haven't stopped. I've just been looking at this for a long time, probably longer than some of you have even been alive. And it's been very, very hard. Relationships, starting with my stepfather, very, very difficult stuff. I'm not even blaming him because now looking at it, I can see that he couldn't have done things any differently than he did. And I probably couldn't, as a small child, could not have done anything any different than what I did or reacted to it. It was just a painful situation. I'm not going to go into any stories about it. Probably I've already done that a few times here, with students or other talks. But I think it's very important to witness the tendency to have something happen and watch how this is my way of talking about it. I would love to have you give me questions about this particular dynamic, because this is a place where we go from how this feels to who did it, or how this feels. So this is not, there's the grasping part, there's the passion part, the blaming part. And the interesting thing is it has a validation to it. You can, if you were to write about it and take it to court or something like that. I don't mean literally, but to some kind of a council or something, you could probably get some validation there about, yes, you were mistreated. This did happen. But this is the relative area that most of the world is hooked by, and some of the world is not hooked by it in a way that it's even reasonable. It's just outrageous and terrible and very painful for all the people who are under the control or authority of a despot, someone who's just in it for how they feel. They avoid their own suffering by manipulating others, blaming others, controlling others, torturing others, etc. And there's other aspect in the society where people actually, it makes some sense. You did do this and this, and they did do this. And if you're in a relationship where someone's treating you this way, maybe you should move away from that relationship rather than just stay in there and try to change that person into someone else. And I'm totally in favor of working with it in a relative way. If you can do it that way, by all means, work with your life in a relative way. There are psychologists, therapists, there are other ways. There are just ways of working with it on your own. Just, belonging to a lodge where there's some kind of community there, belonging to organizations where you get some support from others. That's what our situation is here, is Sangha, or a spiritual community where we get support from others who are endeavoring to see their true nature, see the ultimate nature in this situation, in this tradition of what the Buddha 2,500 years ago was pointing at. People tend to see that a little bit differently as they study it, as they practice it, and sometimes if they teach it. So what I'm trying to say is basically, to simplify it, it's not about stopping anything. It's not about controlling anything. You fundamentally, if you're blaming someone for something, you can't stop the blaming. If you do, you're going to get caught in a loop that is called belief, disbelief, and ignoring, or relative truth. And you can have a little bit of success in there, which is kind of a teaser to keep trying to do it that way, keep trying to just not feel that way, or try to not act a certain way out of how you're feeling. There is some success there, but I'm here to, if insofar as you're listening to me, and it looks like you are, to promote that you actually look at that dynamic with your mind stream, with your, not just with a thinking process, which wants to jump on board and explain everything to you, but have a willingness to be with that emotion or that feeling that seems like cause and effect, that a cause and effect of right or wrong, or cause and effect of this is going well and this is not going so well, and to believe in that. It's the belief in it, the grasping, the passion part of it that just completely covers up what in the traditional statement would be your awakened nature. Consciousness, if you realize what this is, it doesn't mean you'll stop having emotions. They may get more intense because now there isn't a personhood there to fight them. There isn't a personhood there to object to what your karma. As I sometimes say, and it's been said before I got here, whatever shows up in your life, that is your life. It's not what shows up in your life, you've got to stop it. What shows up in your life, you've got to explain it or describe it, do something with it, blame someone for it, etc. So there's a teaching in Buddhism, and I'm not sure of the source. I think it might have been Atisha, but several teachers have talked about all dharmas are without blame. Dharma meaning law or truth or form or structure or anything that occurs is a dharma. So anything that occurs, that is without a fundamental source to it. Nothing has a source. It has sources, but if you go down those, you'll find they start going every direction, and to be able to trace them out or find out the fundamental source of anything, you won't really find it. If you go that direction, it tends to become circular. That's why in the various spiritual traditions, not just Buddhism, sometimes been called samsara, or the wheel of life and death, life and death. It shows up and it goes away. If you'll notice, everything is in circles. The sun and moon, night and day, life and death, emotions, feeling good, not feeling so good, My intention as a Dharma teacher is to help you. It may not always look that way to you. So are there any questions on the nature of blame? Anything you have? Go ahead.
Sokuzan, I think in the beginning of
Louder, please.
I think in the beginning of this talk, you had mentioned that this gets more difficult or challenging for you. How is blame challenging for you that's functioning as a Dharma teacher?
Because it still shows up. This person blaming other situations, or other situations blaming this person, or all the various dynamics. They just get more intense. But it is an illusion. It's just not real. This hand that's being held up right now is unreal. And it's relatively obvious, brightly lit, moving, has a past, and has a future, and has a present. But those are unreal. What more do you want to know?
Shokubai, do you function out
Let's talk about you.
Okay. What is how is the nature of blaming the teacher different from blaming other people?
It's the same. It's exactly the same. Not any different there. The polarity is gone. There's no difference. But as long as there's the confusion, then somebody will manifest as the teaching person and someone will manifest as a student person. It's just emphasizing the polarity. You're emphasizing the illusion so that you can have a possibility of saying, this is not real. I'm having these intense feelings and emotions about him or her or that or this. And it's not real. And yet they're intense. They're vivid. But they're empty of self and empty of another. You can actually see that right while your heart is beating and your knee hurts. That's the way you see it, is to go into the First Noble Truth. Life is suffering. This is not nihilism or negativity. It is your heartbeat. I'm here to help you with that. And quite often it will not look like it. Go ahead.
Shokubai, it seems like with devotion, we often talk about it in the form of falling at the feet of the teacher or some kind of via positiva. But for me, it seems like the negativity is and continues to get stronger. So when it comes to feeling like we're put upon by the teacher or that we're being wronged by the teacher or harmed by the teacher, what do we do as the student when that just...
It's up to you. There are no, I mean, there are suggestions all over the place. There are guidelines all over the place. So there's a sevenfold Mahayana Puja, which all of you probably have heard about, or some of you are even practicing. It's there, you do it. I don't tell you to do that. If you ask about it, I say you could take a look at that. If someone comes to me and says they no longer want to meditate, I say, well, don't meditate then. If they say, well, what do you think I should do? I said, I think you should meditate. I had a student just recently, a student a student I feel very close to, has decided to go another direction for a certain length of time, just doesn't want to do this anymore. Not just the difficulty he has with me, although that's probably some of it, but the difficulty he has with just being in the mix of Sangha, being at the book studies. It's just this, he has to leave for his health. Well, I trust that. I don't know what it's like to be in. Doesn't sound very comfortable. But it's very, very situational. So you changed the situation somewhat. Years ago, you became fully ordained as a monk. So you're giving him a little bit more permission to be a little bit more intense with what I've been working on for a long time over here in this. I've had teachers that have helped me with this. So someone who's just came in the door, so to speak, even though I might see the negativity that they're dealing with or that they're avoiding, I'm not going to jump right on that person. I'll wait. They may never give me permission. Even though they might say, "Oh, I give you permission." Oh, Sokuzan, help me. Yeah, I'm at your feet. I'm your student. I know where they're at. That doesn't mean I'm all seeing. I've just been around for a while. It's like that's all I can say about it. I don't. There's probably more, but it's not showing up. More.
It's just not clear to me on how that functions as a Dharma gate when we're not trying to improve or change.
What is it you want to know? I'm understanding what you're saying, but can you give me a question that would help all of us, I think?
Showing what does it mean to not blame the teacher in the midst of
I didn't say that you have to stop blaming. So, I mean, I could say don't blame, but it's impossible not to do that. You're going to be blaming. It's just like almost a knee-jerk thing coming out. What I'm saying is be aware of the blame. Be responsible for your emotions and your feelings. Realize that you are doing that. Just be aware of it. Like being aware of the weather. But when it's blaming, it's pretty personal weather. Just look at it as much as you can. Very difficult. Like I originally mentioned, my stepfather is very difficult to work with that blaming situation. Well, when I was young, it was impossible to work with it. It's horrible. Well, so just be aware of the blaming. It's not about fixing anything. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Shokodao, if we're able to see the blame clearly, does that take away some of the fuel for the three poisons?
I think it does to some extent. Then it seems this is my way of talking about it. I'm not a psychological chemist or something, but I'm just saying to some extent, if you can just receive, obviously receiving what's happening in the world is very important. Receive whatever happens as much as you can without adding to it or changing it or modifying it, projecting onto it, interpreting or elaborating on it. So just receive it, even though it's triggering some negative things. But to receive it as much as you can. If you can do that, then the very karma that brought you into this world, that made the ears that you have, the skin color you have, the particular kind of psychology that seems to be happening when you were 2 or 3 years old, showing up right away, without even going in any kind of past life stuff. I mean, that may be interesting, but don't really need to do that. Everything's available right now. So by receiving whatever shows up, then there's a possibility of some kind of understanding. You could call it equanimity. Doesn't mean the suffering won't be there. Doesn't mean the difficulty won't be there. Doesn't mean the pain of being blamed or you blaming someone else. Doesn't mean that won't arise, but it does not necessarily fuel that illusion that is running everything most of the time, and samsara, which is belief in itself. It may have to run itself out. It may have to have a lot of negativity come and go in the mind without stopping it, without enhancing it, and without distracting ourselves from it. In other words, my way of saying that, you may have heard me say it before, is don't miss your life. Whatever shows up, that's it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't move to Vermont. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do all kinds of things in relationship to how you're feeling and going to Vermont.
It's in the back of my mind all the time.
What?
It's in the back of my mind all the time.
Is it? Yeah, it's a nice state. Very nice. Fair amount of sanity in Vermont, I would say. More. Take us further into that, Shokodao.
Shokodao, if we are able to see the blame clearly, Does that lead to what Coben said was nothing to do?
With his falling apart, nothing to do. I think it might have been more about the identity. There isn't anybody to do anything. Things still may be done, but they come out of dependent origination. And as a Dharma teacher, my experience with him, it just came out of, it was a choicelessness. And I didn't know him really well, but what I did know with my experience with him, maybe close to that. How's it look to you since you're bringing it up?
Sokuzan, well, that phrase came up as you were describing not getting rid of the blame. It seems like there's no one to blame.
Yeah, it kind of seems that way.
If there's dependent origination, it's who would there be to blame?
Well, you could blame me. You blame Kelsey. You got the broad shoulders. So I'm not sure where you're going at a little bit, but I'm not sure. Can you say more about?
Not yet, thank you.
Thank you. You have one? Go ahead.
Biyun bowing. How does Shikantaza address or work with blame?
So Shikantaza, sitting practice of meditation, is very simple. Just receiving. The instruction is just receive whatever shows up in the mind stream by holding very still. Watch the movement of the mind. Thoughts, memories, emotions, blame, credit, all the stories that show up. The way it addresses that is we train ourselves to receive whatever's showing up in our mind. Thereby it makes it easier, you could say, or more workable to work with what arises in our life. In our mind, we can at least we're kind of responsible for that automatically. It's our thoughts, so there's automatically kind of, I'm thinking this. So, but we don't particularly, we train ourselves to not push it away, not reinforce it, not just keep it very simple and just watch it. And then when we get off the cushion, I think I'm addressing your question. There's less likelihood, there's no guarantee, but there's less likelihood that you'll be projecting out onto everything or having outflows onto everything. Still will happen, but even then there'll be a lot more awareness of those outflows and slowly become maybe more responsible for the way you're pushing on this or pushing on that more.
Biyun bowing. Why do you suppose we sort of like choose this suffering that comes along with blame than the suffering of like the emotion underneath it and something deeper?
Say more.
Sometimes, or at least maybe right now, it seems like blame does a pretty good job at repressing emotion, things that we don't want to feel.
Okay.
And yet when we're blaming, it's like having we're like stuck in it. It's like a trap. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, why do you think we kind of choose almost this trap over dropping down into?
So I think what's being protected by that is the fundamental understanding of there isn't anyone. So before we see there isn't anyone, we think there is someone, and they're in danger. They're being threatened by somebody, or pushed on somebody, or mistreated by somebody. And it's not that they're not. We're not saying that relative truth isn't having a heyday in their life and really making life miserable for you. But we're talking about this, a consciousness part of it goes way beyond this lifetime. That needs to be seen. If you have an interest in the spiritual path, most people don't, it seems. So am I getting close to what you're? So it's about there's since you don't realize that the separate self that we all think we are, we don't realize that that's unreal. We think it's real, and if something happens and we start to feel freaked out, then we want to do something with that. We want to protect something. When you try to protect something that's not real, it takes on an even stronger reality. That's like if you push on it, it gets stronger. It's not real, but you're pushing on it. If you do anything with it, it takes on. I quite often use the example of watching a movie, especially a scary movie. You know it's unreal, but you only know it's unreal kind of tangentially. You're actually, when you watch the movie, you're right in there where the zombie is about to spring out of the closet. And of course, zombies usually don't spend much time in closets, but it's going to get the other person, and we're afraid. Even though it's a movie, but we have a kind of fear in that area. It's similar to that. It's not the same. It's more intense. You're actually actual life, not seen as a movie. And if you do see it as a movie, if you do see that this is unreal, the emotions and the feelings will still be there, and they're still looking for a self that will second the motion. And so by practicing awareness practice, we get a little closer to seeing that that is unreal, and we begin to lose our tight chokehold on ourselves as a separate being, and on everything else as separate beings who are better than everybody, or separate beings who are causing our difficulty or to blame. There's no blame. There's no one's any better, any worse than anyone else. The teacher-student situation, which was talked about earlier, this is an illusion. No one's any better than anybody else. Everyone is completely awake. If you don't see it, then we have warfare. More?
Being bowing, does it take a no self to feel everything? Or
Consciousness is always receiving everything, consciousness itself, but it's not a separate being. The consciousness that I'm referring to here with a concept is the same consciousness everyone has. But if it shows up in a human form, because of the causes and conditions that brought about these ears, this way of looking, and all of the hidden areas of karma that we can't see, like our particular emotional dynamics, our way of working with our mind, which sometimes is very tight and orderly and protective, and sometimes it's very open and going this way and this way and this way. We've all met somebody who's never seems to have any position on anything. They're at once enjoyable and confusing because they're just kind of all over the place. They can be very delightful. They can also be confusing. So, but everyone has a different kind of structure of karma. Shows up different ways. So each of us, if we're lucky enough to stumble into the Dharma, we'll have somebody who will help us see that. Ondo.
Ondo bowing. It seems like when we blame the teacher, that there's a tension between everything the teacher does as a teaching. Can the teacher do something wrong?
Teacher's always doing something wrong.
How do your students take that as a teaching, even though?
Most of them don't. Surprised to hear that. They don't. They think the teacher is this or that, should do that, they shouldn't do this. They might not be telling me that. They don't. I know, both of my teachers, I had big interior arguments with them as at the same time they were my teachers.
Ondo bowing. What do we do with those stories that we're creating that we blame the teacher because we feel the teacher's doing something wrong?
Just receive them. I'll correct anything. There's nothing to correct. Just receive it. Be genuine. Let it wipe you out. You can do that. You have nothing to lose. Why? There isn't anyone. But if you don't realize that, if you don't know that, then there's going to be a threat. Then you might do something wrong. Maybe you should get this, or maybe you should do that. Maybe you should do like I just said. My student just recently decided to, take a hiatus. I think it's another word for vacation. That's totally appropriate. Relatively, that person needs to do that. So I'm not going to, if they were to ask me what to do, I said, I think you should probably just continue to stay here and practice, but I don't know what they're dealing with. And if this is what they didn't really ask me about it, they just said, this is what I need to do. So I said, okay, go do that. More?
Ondo bowing. you're saying to just look at it, even though we can't receive it.
But seeing that you're whole, you know, you have a barrier, a wall there that you're not receiving it. You just said it, seeing you can't receive it, even though you can't receive it, but you're aware that you can't receive it. Do nothing with that. Don't say, here's why I can't receive it. You do that, you create a loop. It's called samsara, and you participate in the mind stream going in circles. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, it shouldn't be. If I can just figure this out, I just need to figure this out. Why can't I just get to what this is? I'm not trying to eliminate the intellect. I'm just saying that consciousness needs to be in the driver's seat. Intellect can sit right here, but consciousness, in other words, awareness, you need to receive this, and it will not be easy. First noble truth, suffering. More, please.
Oh, divine. So then we as students, if we produce out of the story and our inability to receive, what do we do with that production? If it seems to create further.
I'm not following you because I want to know what you want to know. I understand what you're describing, but what do you want to know? I can't help you in any other way.
Oh, divine, what do we do when we're stuck in that samsara loop and we don't see it?
You just said it, so you must have some awareness there. The downside is what you just described. That's the suffering part. The upside is you're aware of that. It will not taste good. It will not smell good. It will not feel good. And if you do anything with it, you just missed your life. When I'm saying missed your life, no, you haven't missed it. That's a teaching. Don't miss your life. But there's something about the resistance there that you personally, I can't do it for you, but you personally need to look in that area of when certain things are happening in your life where you're resisting and pushing back. It's about the awareness of that, not about getting rid of that or accomplishing anything, because that's the way you get close to the fundamental misunderstanding, which is mistaken identity. You think you are a separate being. There isn't anything separate from anything. You are this. If you're anything, you're just this. It just happens to show up as the illusion of separate individuals or beings. This person is nobody. This person is dead. Because this person as an individual is dead, everybody's emotions are happening right here. I can't look at a single person without seeing how you feel. And I'm not reading your mind. I'm not reading your thoughts, but I don't have to. I see it on your face. I see it on your face. I see it in yours. I see it in yours and yours and yours. And it is overwhelming. If there's a person here that doesn't want that, if there's a person there that goes into some kind of psychology about, well, the reason you're feeling this is because of this, this, or this, figure you out. No, it's just suffering. Life is suffering, and it's all pervasive. And the three types of suffering is the pain of pain, which everybody has: toothaches, headaches, any kind of difficulty, depression. And then the pain of alternation. These are just classical descriptions, which is the coming and going. Things are fine now, but they're going to get worse. That kind of suffering. It's not here yet, but it's coming. So you're already suffering, even though it has not showed up on your doorstep. And then the pain of the composite, which is conceptual description, but there's no way to describe what that is other than everything is there. You feel it everywhere. It just has no personhood. There's no person feeling anything. It's just suffering. Yes.
You're now bowing. What do we do when we want to correct the teacher in some way?
If you're a student, and if you're actually like you're a fully ordained monk, you should say something to the teacher. I had a student recently that would not tell me what was happening. Not tell me, and decided to just go another direction. Not wrong. They did the best they could. I'm not right, and they're wrong, and they're not right, and I'm wrong. There's no the right and wrong are just extra. They just don't work. It's just suffering. Yes, you should say something. You should talk about it. CCC, communicate, cooperate, collaborate, and do it with, like you're doing right now. Asking a question about it.
You're now bowing. What if that correction seems to border on how the teacher is teaching?
Say more.
just if we feel you are misunderstanding what someone or myself is
Teacher is?
saying to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you do? What are you gonna do about that? Could you say something? Could you say to the teacher, I think you're misunderstanding something? To the teacher? Is it possible?
Sometimes,
Have you done that? Have you said that?
you know, I've done that, but I've also not done it because it didn't seem
Appropriate?
appropriate or something. Or I was in a reactive mode or
So
something.
have you ever come this direction and felt this teacher get defensive?
Yes.
Is that surprising? Aren't you supposed to be kind of above all that? And I'm not going to come back in with well, it's a mirror. I'm not going to tell you that. Mirrors don't talk. Do they? More about it. If you have it, that's a good direction to go. I can share something after you're done. I can share something. I did not want to come in here. But I don't want to be here. This is not comfortable for me. I'm not getting a bunch of, oh, it's wonderful. These people are all admiring me because I'm a Dharma teacher. No, this is very, very distressing to sit in front of people who are suffering intensely and are wrapped up in their little story. When I say little, I don't mean it dismissive, because to you, it's intense difficulty or suffering and pain, and you're trying to find a way to get away from it. And I feel that. And there's no way I can do it for you. The only thing I can say, if I never see you again, and that may happen next week, if I never see you again, remember this, train your mind. Don't get your identity from me or from anyone. You find out who you are. You have to find out who you are. It doesn't have anything to do with Buddhism. Although Buddhism might be a way to get to right up to the edge of the cliff where you have to dive into no self. There isn't any self or any other. You may need that structure. I certainly did. More.
That's kind of lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Why do I keep missing who you are for your personality?
Because you're stuck on your own personality. Make sense?
No.
All right. I like that.
Spell it out.
Huh?
Spell it out.
Mouse.
Okay.
Mouse. Good as any word. It's that kind of a thing. It's a language where the meaning doesn't show up anywhere. Children know this. Talk to a child, so they'll talk to you for 3-4 minutes. They already know this. They're already still in a state of not being particularly embodied yet, but we're all working on getting them to plug into that body and be somebody. Wendell,
On
I'll come
about,
back to you.
how we work with the teacher's karma, the karma that's showing up for the teacher, and see that as, yeah, how do we work with the teacher's karma?
I don't know what you're asking me.
How do we give the teacher credit to have
You don't have to
having
give-
karma?
Oh, the teacher has, you can't get here. I couldn't do this if I hadn't been through several different realms, the basic one being hell realm. I was born in it. I'm not saying that you weren't. You probably have had a good taste of being in hell or being in a really difficult, painful area, or you wouldn't be here on this path. People that are born into heaven realm or someplace where they have everything, even though the environment isn't everything, there's still the karma that brought you into the lifetime in the first place. But how do you work with it? Work with your own karma. Work with whatever happens in your mind, receive it. Whatever happens out in front of you, receive it. Even Dogen said, if you go out into the world and try to do this and fix that, my interpretation of what he said, then this is the very nature of illusion. But if the world just comes to you and everything is welcome, receive this incredible world, including your own thought stream, then this is awakening. Yes.
Kelsey Bowing, you said that we have our intellectual side and then consciousness, and we need to be consciousness forward. And I'm wondering, I'm seeing relationship patterns for myself that have existed for 20 or more years. And there's a really strong intellectual craving to understand it. Is that the same? How does that relate to blame? How do I be consciousness forward instead of intellectual?
Just work with the intellect, study. Give that area of the consciousness a lot of dharma. That's what all of the intellectual, the works of Vasubandhu or Dogen Zenji, who was very good at working with intellectual understanding in the intuitive area of consciousness, which is beyond the structures of concepts and so on. But it's not excluding them. He actually carries the whole thing along. Quite the anti-gravity machine, Dogen Zenji. So I would say, rather than try to be more aware, then just work, be respectful to that area of your mind that is consciousness, or in terms of intellect or analysis. Yes.
Kelsey, I am hearing you say that as be respectful, meaning like meet it in its intellectual side.
Yes.
How does that not reinforce the intellectual side?
Sitting practice of meditation, it will reinforce it to some extent, but it won't, but it'll do it in a way that is respectful, not in a way that gives it some kind of credential. So it's respectful to that. It's part of consciousness. We need to think. We have thoughts. When I say that, I've heard to say it's actually it's more like thoughts have us, because we don't produce thoughts. It just looks like we do. The part of the illusion of being a separate being is to think that you think. You don't think. Thoughts think. Emotions feel. There's no separate being anywhere. This is an astonishing illusion that will take us through all kinds of difficulty, unless we have a path that emphasizes the truth or emphasizes awareness. Being
Valley, why do I keep missing who you are for your personality?
It's the why question. The why is the circle. Why that takes you away from what it is you're asking about into some kind of understanding that will maybe bring you back into some kind of reasonable or intellectual or conversational even understanding of it, which has a relative accuracy to it. So when you say, why am I missing? Actually, the downside of that is the feeling of missing. That's a negativity. The upside of it is a realization that there's something you might need to see that might be more true, that you might be settling for the story about it. And if you're around me very much, I'm just full of craziness. Yes.
Ian Bowing, so how can blaming you actually help me go into that deeper for myself?
So it is about awareness, and just be aware that you're doing that. It's not about not blaming. The teaching in different lineages and traditions even talk about offering everything to the teacher. All of your misery, all of your suffering, all of your guilt, all of it. And different ways of doing that through actual using because your body and your mind are not actually separated like they look, or separated, but not actually separate like they look like they are. You can talk to your mind with your body by offering prostration or just bowing. We've already talked about that. So when I come up and bow, I'm bowing to my teachers. I'm bowing to the traditional my understanding of the Buddha, who lived thousands of years ago. So anytime I come to the altar, it's like I've never been there before. I look at every single object on the altar. I look at the image of the Buddha and realize it's a big chunk of wood that represents somebody who no longer is physically present, but who was a teacher. Yes.
On divine, how can we use the teacher as an example when we see the teacher who receives everything, and which includes his karma?
I don't know. Maybe you can.
How do we, I mean, that is even part of the sevenfold Mahayana Puja, the example of teachers being grateful for the teachers of the past and their teachings. How do we
You could
receive
start-
the
you could start
teaching
with-
of you?
You could start with them. Because your personal teacher might be more difficult than, say, Wainam or Vasubandhu or the Buddha, or some person that you don't have to look directly in the eyes. You look the person directly in the eyes, that person's looking right at your karma. They're right at your blind spots. They're not reading your mind. They don't have any idea what you're thinking. It doesn't matter, but they can see it because you radiate it, just like you would radiate love or kindness or generosity. Very difficult to see the teacher because it's always going to look like a mirror. Even though the teacher isn't particularly trying to be mirror-like, they're not doing anything. They've been dumped out of the personal self through just the grace of the Buddha. There's no proof. There's no guarantee of anything. It can be very challenging. It can be very, very threatening to ego in such a way that it actually looks like something is wrong. The ego is very good at stabilizing and making sure that it's protected. It gets harder. The longer you're on the path, the more it's going to look like you're maybe in danger. You're not. But don't believe this. Find out for yourself. Go right into the darkness. You're not going to find the light by going into the light. You need to go into the darkness, and the darkness is being a human being. How do I know? I don't know. I don't know it. If I know it, I know Shoka has his fingers up. I know that. Am I right? Relative truth. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, does the wall that I see when I look at you or when I'm in front of you mean that I'm not devoted?
There's no way you can tell if you're devoted or not. It's not a relative situation. It's not a credential. I've never once said to anyone, a student of mine, that they're devoted or not devoted. If they keep coming this way, I might say that. I mean, if they ask me about it, if we talk about it, there might be some activity like that, but it's not much. It's up to you to understand that. Yes.
Sokuzan. When I see that wall, I go to pride or shame.
That's awareness. You can stop right there. You don't have to. You can go on, but when you go into that, that's awareness about it. It's not something that's wrong or something you need to fix or get rid of. You're just aware of it, like you're aware of palm trees. You ever seen a palm tree?
One time ago.
One time? Well,
Sokuzan, what is devotion when, as a student, I relate to that out of pride or shame?
doesn't matter. It's awareness of that. Just the awareness of that. The devotion part has to do with the way I talk about it as intention. The intention to see the truth no matter what. No matter what happens. I, as a living being, or you, or anybody, if you see this, I'm going to do this. You may need to be practice the Buddha's Dharma. You may need vows. You may need to be fully ordained as a monk. You may need to just train your mind, see clearly. Don't get your identity or your truth or anything from anybody, including from the teacher. All the teacher can do is point, and the way that they point may not be comfortable. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, what is that wall?
What's what wall?
The feeling of solidity or the wall that I look at when I look at it.
Fear that something is threatened, that if you see it truly as an illusion, there's nothing threatened. But if you see there's nothing threatened, then you're fearless. Not you're fearless, but fearlessness is fearless. There's no person has an identity of I'm not afraid of anything. I don't care what happens and so on. Although you're not concerned about what happens next. It'd be like being concerned what happens in any illusion. The next part is just unreal. There is no location in time or space. You have to see it. If you don't see it, then you'll continue to believe your thoughts and act out of passion, aggression, ignorance, albeit very, very subtle. You can be very subtle. You may look like a totally serene, kind, loving person, but yet under the surface, is that what's happening to you?
Doesn't feel like it.
Huh?
Doesn't feel like it. I don't think I appear as a kind, loving person.
Oh, really? Okay. I won't argue with you then.
I certainly don't feel that.
Any further questions?
Neil Kabine,
Okay.
several questions on YouTube.
Yes.
Adriana Bowing, is being able to relatively accurately blame someone for something a Dharmagate? Bowing.
I'm not sure what you're trying to find out, but relatively accurately blame somebody. Let's see. Like I'm blaming you for asking me a question. It's irritating to me. How's that? What is it you want to know, Adriana?
Neil Kabine, we have another question from
Pretty good question, really.
the question from
Oh, you're going to leave her question?
well, she hasn't responded to yours.
I don't care.
Okay.
What was the question again from Adriana? I want to respond to it.
Neil Kabine, is being able to relatively accurately blame someone for something a Dharmagate? Bowing.
The way you're asking it, and for you, this is not a general statement for everybody, but for you, yes, that's a Dharma gate. Next question.
Susanna Bowing, can we learn to unlearn, not blame? It doesn't become projection on others.
I can understand the question, and I would say I don't think it's important. Let's just look at the blaming rather than try to figure out how to not blame or unlearn that. This is a relative thing that can be very valuable. Some people are not ready to do this with consciousness. They need to do it with their thinking process. They need to have cognitive behavioral kind of approaches to it. I'm not against it. You need to do something with it. You might need to do that. But if you're going to do it with the awareness practice, and if you're listening to this person here, then I'm saying do it with the awareness. This will not be easy because you're going down to the very foundation of the disturbance, the very foundation of the original ignorance. You're going down into that and you're going to look at that. You can do that. It may take a long time, but you don't have to stop blaming. Just be aware of the blaming. The teachings say all dharmas are without blame. So, but I'm not asking you to believe that. Just you can consider anything that happens has no source. It's working with it intellectually and with concepts. And then, okay, let's study that. Okay, we studied. Now let's go and sit down and look at the wall or look at the floor. Or if you're doing mindfulness, you might be looking at the inside of your eyelids. Just some kind of sitting still and watching what continues to move seems to be very, very helpful to eventually, again, using that time word, eventually, which is unreal also, see what this is, because you've always known this. That's why it's so amazing. You've always known it. You actually transcend time and space, and you still get up and have a stomach ache or go have breakfast or something. The relative thing could be even more intense. And you could still be afraid of things or be in love with things. Quite amazing.
Sokuzan Bowing.
Go ahead.
Isn't
We hard to turn away from that. Yes.
when I have an emotion,
Yes.
and I want to blame,
Yes.
isn't it the action of doing the blaming that will cause me the suffering?
Well, you're kind of breaking it up into kind of a structural thing where you're blaming, but the emotion of doing that, then consciousness is probably going to happen before you make it into a concept. So as far as the action part of it, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into the conversational area of that, but I would say just be aware of it. The thing you've described, spend a lot of time on the cushion just watching the mind blame or discredit or do anything or daydream. Just watch it. Watch yourself fall asleep. Watch yourself, give yourself credit for you just sat for 3 hours. Just observe, observe, observe. And as much as you can, don't leave the observing for what it means or what you've accomplished or what. But if you put that kind of tension on it, then you'll notice that you actually do move this way and that way. And that's not so much about what you do, it's about what you're aware of. This is what's important. Because otherwise we're hooked by relative truth and we think, if I can do this, then I can stop that. And this is quite a bit of delusion going on there. So all you have to do is be aware. I don't use this word often, but I'm going to use it right now because it's like this. It's like you just have completely surrendered everything. Like Sokuzan sometimes says, everything's appropriate. It's kind of a commentary on what just happened. Everything's appropriate. Not that it doesn't look right or wrong or should be or shouldn't be. Nothing to fix. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Senshu, one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan offers his wisdom tirelessly with complete love and devotion. If you value these teachings, Sokuzan, the mandala of SokukoJi, please consider donating at sokukoji.org. Thank you.